I want to tell you something that's been sitting heavy on me since this morning, and I think once I walk you through it, you're going to understand why. There's a letter, an actual official letter from the league office. And depending on how you read it, it's either the NFL finally drawing a line in the sand, or it's the most hollow piece of corporate posturing we've seen out of that building in years. I've read it twice now, and I still don't know which version I believe more. So let's just get into it together, because there's a lot happening here, and not all of it is about football. Brendan Sorsby is done. Not suspended, not benched, done. The NFL just told him in writing that there will be no supplemental draft this year, and without that draft, there is no door for him to walk through. No college eligibility left. No NFL roster spot available. He is, in the most literal sense, a man standing outside of football with nowhere left to knock. Let me back up, because I know not everyone followed this story closely, and the parts that led here matter just as much as the ending. A few weeks back, the Big 12 Conference moved to take legal action against Texas Tech, and in the middle of that mess, Sorsby's name kept surfacing. Shedeur Sanders, of all people, said something that stuck with me. He basically asked why anyone would even want a player on their roster who'd been gambling against his own team. Blunt, no spin. And at the time, I remember thinking, well, that's one program's opinion. Turns out it wasn't just his opinion. The league apparently feels exactly the same way, and now we have the paperwork to prove it. Here's what actually happened. Sorsby submitted a petition to the league office asking for special eligibility into a supplemental draft dated June 16th. The response he got back wasn't a maybe. It wasn't even a soft no. It was a methodical, almost surgical dismantling of his entire case. And I want to walk you through exactly what it said, because the wording matters. The league started by reminding everyone that under the collective bargaining agreement, the commissioner's office has total discretion over whether a supplemental draft even happens in a given year. They hadn't run one in years. And before Sorsby's petition landed on their desk, they say they had zero plans to start one now because no other player had even asked. So right out of the gate, the framing is this. You didn't create an opportunity. You tried to force one into existence for yourself, and we don't appreciate that. Then it gets sharper. The league pointed out that the petition came in just 3 business days before the deadline. No supporting documents, no real explanation. And this is the part that really stings. It came only after Sorsby had already abandoned his own legal fight against the NCAA's sanctions. Think about the sequence there for a second. He fought the ruling in court. He lost momentum, or lost confidence, or just gave up the fight. And only after walking away from that battle did he turn around and ask the NFL for a lifeline. The league basically said, you can't drop one fight and expect us to hand you a different one. And then comes the part of the letter that I think most people are going to focus on, because it's the part with real teeth. The league laid out plainly what they understand the NCAA found. According to public information, in May, the NCAA ruled that Sorsby was permanently barred from college athletics, not suspended. Permanently done. The reasoning: a sustained pattern of improper gambling activity across his time at 3 different schools. Sit with that for a second. 3 schools, not a single lapse in judgment in 1 week moment. A pattern, stretched across multiple programs, multiple seasons, multiple chances to stop and didn't. The specifics the league cited are even harder to shake off. Reports indicate wagers placed on his own team, on his own teammates, and to dodge detection, the use of other people's names and accounts to place those bets on his behalf. That's not a guy who made one bad call during a rough night. That's a structure, a system built specifically to keep gambling money moving while keeping his own name off the paper trail. There are even references to possible violations of state criminal law layered on top of all of it. And through all of that, the league noted, Sorsby's petition never addressed any of it. No accountability, no acknowledgement, no indication of how he'd actually follow the rules going forward if they let him in. Instead of owning what happened, the letter says he tried to outrun the consequences through litigation and only pivoted toward the NFL once that legal route closed on him. The league closed with something almost ceremonial, quoting Commissioner Goodell's old standby about how playing in this league is a privilege, not a right. And that privilege comes loaded with responsibility. They told him, sure, you've got talent, nobody's denying that, but go take a year, sit with what happened, and maybe try again for the 2027 draft. That's the letter. That's the whole thing laid bare. And the second this got out, the league's insider started weighing in immediately. Adam Schefter put it about as directly as you can. This wasn't really about Sorsby specifically, not entirely. It was about the league standing up and saying, loudly, that nothing that happens at the college level gets to follow you into our building unaddressed. Whatever baggage you're carrying when you arrive, you deal with it before you walk through our doors. not after. And honestly, when I really thought about it, this checks out with something that's been bugging insiders for months. Every single time someone brought up the supplemental draft, league sources would go quiet. Vague answers. The commissioner has to decide. Nobody would give a straight timeline. Looking back now, that hesitation wasn't bureaucracy. It was the league already knowing exactly how this was going to play out and not wanting to tip their hand early. Here's the part that gets uncomfortable though, and I think we have to say it out loud. The NFL makes an enormous amount of money from gambling partnerships, sponsorships, odds boards built right into broadcasts, betting apps advertised during the games themselves, and yet here they are, drawing an absolute hard line the second a player's name gets tied to wagering, even when the NCAA itself said there was no in-game integrity violation tied to his specific bets. The league doesn't seem to care about that distinction. If your name and the word gambling appear in the same sentence, that's enough. They're not interested in nuance here. They wanted a clean, fast, unambiguous answer, and they gave themselves one by simply refusing to hold the draft at all. So now Sorsby is stuck in this strange suspended state, banned from college football, no path into the NFL until at least next year's draft cycle. Some insiders are already speculating he'll try to fight this legally too, but realistically, what leverage does he actually have? There's no supplemental draft to challenge. There's no roster spot sitting open waiting on a verdict. The opportunity just evaporates. Time keeps moving, and he's the one standing still, watching a season, maybe more than one, slip away while he prepares for a draft that's still a long way off. Now here's where this story takes a turn that I think a lot of people aren't expecting, because the fallout isn't just about Sorsby himself, it's about everyone who spent months building entire narratives around him. If you followed Browns coverage at all this offseason, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Every single week it felt like another segment, another hot take, comparing Sorsby to Shedeur Sanders. Would the Browns make a move? Could Sorsby push his way into that quarterback room? Was Shedeur's grip on the position actually as secure as people thought? Hours and hours of speculation, and now, all at once, the entire premise collapses because there's no Sorsby to speculate about anymore. And the reactions since the letter dropped have been something else to watch. There's real frustration out there, real disappointment from people who'd invested months of coverage into a storyline that just got cut off at the knees. One columnist even said, "This isn't the end of the story, like there's some sequel coming." I get the instinct. Nobody wants to admit they spent an entire offseason building a narrative tower on sand. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves here. There isn't a next chapter. The door's closed. The league made sure of that. What really got me, though, was hearing one Browns reporter brought back up on air, almost reflexively, talking about whether Cleveland might still throw a late bid in for Sorsby, like the door hadn't just been welded shut. And to her credit, even she hesitated, saying the front office is probably steering clear, especially given everything already swirling around their quarterback room. Her exact phrasing stuck with me, something about needing to turn down the noise in that room, which, if you think about it, tells you everything about how unstable that quarterback situation already feels behind closed doors, even before any of this Sorsby news broke. And look, I want to be fair here, because not everyone reacting to this is being lazy or hypocritical. Some of the strongest pushback I heard actually came from people who refused to let the NFL claim some moral high ground out of this. One radio host put it about as sharply as I've heard anyone put it. He said the league sits on billions of dollars in gambling revenue every single year, and then turns around and acts like integrity is the reason they're shutting Sorsby out. That's not nothing. That's a real contradiction, and I don't think we should just wave it away because the headline sounds tough. His larger point was this: you can think Sorsby made serious mistakes, you can believe the gambling allegations are disqualifying, and still recognize that the league using this moment to puff its chest out about protecting the integrity of the game is more about optics than principle. He didn't let Sorsby off easy either, to be clear. He was just as critical of how Sorsby's camp handled the public relations side of this, going on air sounding like the victim instead of taking real ownership. He even said Sorsby might want new representation after how this whole thing was managed. But his core argument stands. A massive organization crushing one individual player doesn't automatically become noble just because that player made real mistakes. I sat with that for a while, honestly, because both things can be true at once. Sorsby's conduct, by every account we have, was serious and repeated and not some isolated lapse. And also, the NFL benefits enormously from the exact activity it's now using as justification to end his career before it even starts. Both of those facts exist in the same story, and I don't think pretending otherwise does anyone any favors. Now, while all of that was unfolding, there was a second story bubbling up in Cleveland that honestly made me almost as frustrated, just for completely different reasons. Trade rumors, already, about Shedeur Sanders, before he's even gotten through a full training camp as the guy genuinely competing for the job. Reports started circulating, the kind that get labeled speculative but somehow spread everywhere anyway, naming teams like the Jets, the Dolphins, the Cardinals, and the Buccaneers as potential landing spots if Cleveland decided to move him. And when this hit the airwaves, you could hear almost instantly just how exhausted some former players are with this entire cycle. One former Browns defensive back didn't even try to hide his frustration. You could hear it crack through before he even got a full sentence out, that mix of disbelief and just being completely fed up with it. His reaction was simple, and honestly, it's hard to argue with it. We finally have a quarterback who's shown real growth, real improvement, and we haven't even gotten through a full preseason to actually see what he can do. And we're already talking trade, before he's proven anything, before he's failed anything either. And here's the question that actually stopped the conversation cold for a second. What if the timing of this isn't random at all? What if Shedeur's recent jump in performance, all the buzz about him fighting his way into the starting job, what if that improvement itself is exactly why these trade whispers started circulating now? Because here's the harsh truth about this business. A quarterback who's playing well and pushing for a starting job is worth infinitely more on the trade market than one buried on the bench. If you're a front office and you're even quietly considering moving on, you wait for the value to peak first. You don't trade him when he's struggling. You trade him right when everyone's starting to believe in him. That theory hit different in real time. The response was somewhere between disbelief and outright refusal to accept it, saying he hoped it was just noise, just radio chatter filling dead air during a slow part of the offseason because preseason hadn't even started yet and there wasn't much else to talk about. But here's what got brought up next, and I think it's a fair point that doesn't get raised enough. Nobody's running this kind of speculation about other position groups on this roster. You don't hear this constant drumbeat about receivers or linebackers. It's specifically quarterbacks who get this treatment, this constant churn of rumor and theory, mostly because the position carries so much weight that any whisper about it becomes instant content. The conversation got more heated from there. There was a kind of imagined scenario thrown out. A front office executive calling up another team, offering Shedeur for a second or even a first-round pick, and the blunt, immediate answer to that hypothetical was just flat refusal. No, not happening. Not for that. And honestly, I understand that reaction completely. Shedeur Sanders is a first-round talent. He's not a throwaway piece you flip for value when things get a little crowded in the quarterback room. He's not in the same category as a journeyman backup you trade because somebody else likes the fit better. And there's another layer to this that I think people forget too quickly. The Browns head coach has reportedly been chasing this player, wanting him on this roster since high school. You don't spend years building toward landing a specific quarterback and then ship him out the moment the depth chart gets a little noisy. So where does all of this actually leave us? Sorsby's situation feels almost final at this point. The league closed that door, intentionally, methodically, and there's no clear legal avenue left for him to force it back open before next year's draft cycle. Whether you think the NFL's reasoning is principled or convenient probably depends on how much patience you have for an organization that profits from gambling while punishing a player connected to it. I don't think those two positions cancel each other out. I think they coexist uncomfortably in the same story. And in Cleveland, the quarterback room drama isn't going anywhere either. Shedeur's improvement on the field seems to be generating exactly the kind of attention that makes some people nervous, the kind that turns into trade speculation before a single preseason snap has even been taken. Whether that ends up being real smoke or just noise from a slow off-season news cycle, we won't know until camp actually opens and the conversation shifts from rumor to roster. Two very different stories, two very different quarterbacks, but the same underlying theme running through both of them. In this league, perception moves faster than proof ever does, and sometimes the loudest stories are the ones that have the least amount of actual football behind them yet.